Anime, porn, and vending machines, the holy trinity of things that foreigners find oddly fascinating and weird about Japan. As much as Westerners love to imbibe Japanese media, adult or otherwise, nothing has hit that sense of, man, Japan is kooky in our popular imagination than the ubiquity and broad selection of vending machines in Japan. Hence why if you search for Japan vending machine in YouTube, you will find hundreds of videos that explain all the odd things that vending machines in Japan sell. From alcohol to large bags of rice to frozen foods and dairy products, of course, sex toys, prostitutes and used underwear, the Japanese vending machine has developed such a mythos that even the typical listicle and clickbait sites have jumped on the bandwagon. Unlike most myths though, the Japanese vending machine is a real thing that actually exists and has become a source of pride or intrigue for natives and foreigners alike. Not to break the magic too much guys, but in the grand scheme of things, Japan isn't that weird with what they put in the vending machines. Most of the unique items one can find in Japan's vending machines are just different types of food or drinks that aren't really that unique. When compared to gold dispensers in Dubai, live crab machines in China and Las Vegas, or car vending machines like those sold by Carvana, is it that weird to have beer, hot drinks, and rice? Yeah, the sex stuff is kind of creepy, but when you consider that the easiest and technically only legal way for a dude under the age of 18 to buy a condom is by a indiscreet little coin-operated machines in dirty gas station bathrooms, you can't really be that disgusted. Or maybe that's just me. What is unique about Japanese vending machines though is how many of them there are, and how reliant Japanese people are in getting things from easy to access sources. This does not just include machines either. Japan has built an entire marketplace dedicated to conveniently buying things that does not really have an equivalent elsewhere in the world. 7-Eleven, the popular American convenience store, ended up being acquired by a Japanese-based conglomerate. In an interesting turn of events, a company that was originally exported to Japan ended up surviving due to its prevalence in the Japanese marketplace. And that's not all, from Kobini to pod hotels, and yes, even our good misunderstood friend the vending machine, Japan has developed a love-love relationship with convenience. And that's where our journey leads us today. That's right, we're going to be talking about a very, very sexually charged topic: Japan, convenience, and automation. Of all the usual reasons people give for the widespread use of vending machines in Japan, one of the more interesting is the idea that the Japanese have historically been fascinated with automation and robots more so than other cultures. The truth is that most ancient cultures have some form of humanoid automata in their founding myths, and Japan is no different. In the Nihon Shokai, a semi-historical chronicle of ancient Japan written in the 7th century, there is a reference to the Buddhist monk Chiyu creating what the book referred to as a south-pointing chariot, something like a large vehicle-sized compass that would always point towards the magnetic south. This reference was about 300 years before the first magnetically north-pointing compass that was invented in China. Skipping ahead about 1,000 years, and the first physical Japanese robots was created. During the Tokugawa period, 1600 to 1868, the Japanese had a limited but robust trading relationship with the Dutch that were experts in not only in European science, but also great innovators in mechanics. Exchanges with the Dutch, which the Japanese often refer to as Rongaku, brought in new technologies such as clock springs, gears, cans, and wunderkammer that would lead to the creation of karakuri, wooden puppets that performed a certain action, like serving tea or dancing, with a push of a button or the flip of a switch. The first vending machine used the very same Dutch technology, although it was the British who took the lead by using the mechanics to create a portable cigarette machine operated by coins. In the 1870s, the first standalone vending machine was also manufactured in England, this time selling postcards. By this point, the British and the German have become the preferred trading partners with the Japanese. As Japan was undergoing the Meiji Restoration, during this period, Japan began importing certain ideas of modernization from Britain and Germany, especially including technology, democracy, secondary education, and hardcore imperialism. Check out our video on Japanese high schools to learn more about this fascinating exchange. But skipping ahead, this friendship did not last forever. During World War II, Japan allied with the Germans against the British, and despite never being invaded, the Japanese got fucked. Tokyo, the capital, as well as its major port cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki all got destroyed by either long campaigns of firebombing or short bursts of atomic bombing. In the wake of all the physical destruction, the mental and psychological effects of the World War just ravaged Japan. Mass starvation, destroyed infrastructure, widespread demoralization, and a specific type of exhaustion known as kyodasu covered the Japanese population, especially in those cities. But even though their friendship had ended with Britain and Germany, Japan's new best friends were the United States, who, despite being the cause of most of the destruction, occupied and helped rebuild Japan so that the Japanese did not fall to communism. With support from the United States, Japan underwent an economic miracle, which by the 1980s made Japan the global mecca of capitalistic economic prosperity, second only to the United States. Most of what Japan did to achieve this economic miracle can be boiled down to a baby boom, which expanded its workforce, investments in internal infrastructure, especially their railways, which led to an intense period of urbanization, and the creation of the social welfare system. Given that Japan had no longer a defense budget, they could spend the money on themselves, and all of this economic prosperity self-destructed in the 1990s when Japan's labor market began to shrink. Its boomer workforce began to age out, and the United States suddenly got the hots for China as its sexy new Asian investment area. So that brings us to today. Finally. What was this video again? Oh, that's right, vending machines are not just this weird thing in Japan just to be quirky. They're part of a larger culture of convenience that includes konbini, pod hotels, arcade cabinets, and whatever the hell this is. The culture is influenced by a number of economic and social factors. The main one is urbanization. Unlike the United States, where the country is split pretty evenly between cities and countryside, of Japan's 130 million people, 116 million live in cities. Like the US, however, after World War II, Japan developing stores like fast food chains and Walmart-esque grocery stores in order to meet the demands of a growing middle class. But given just how many people in Japan live in cities, and that Japan is an island, and that they don't have the same car culture as the US, which, by the way, we have done a video on, check it out, things like drive-thrus and department stores that take up a lot of real estate did not catch on quite as much. In Japanese cities, space is a luxury. If you can sell goods without having a retail storefront, all the better. If you can get people to stay the night in a closet, hell, that's money, baby. Another thing we touched on was the cost of labor. Japan has an aging and shrinking population, and with less workers, the cost of hiring people to man up your store goes up. This is all the more prevalent in Japan due to the fact that unskilled laborers are expected to be paid better than they are in the US. Business and work hours also tend to be longer. Although there are more public holidays in Japan, especially in white-collar jobs, the expectation is that if your boss is working, so are you, no matter how late into the evening he chooses to stay. And I mean he, since most Japanese corporate honchos are still dudes. So if your time is spent mostly at the job place, that leaves less of it at home and things to do like clean, shop, and cook. You need a quick and easy place to buy things, so convenience stores and vending machines need to adapt to fit the marketplace. But the foodstuffs they carry can't just be your typical fare of high sugar beverages and candy and junk. Japanese people tend to be more health conscious than Americans, so a wider variety of foods of higher quality need to be stocked in order for a vending machine or konbini to actually get people to buy there. Incidentally, this is also why Japanese people tend to wear masks outside of pandemics, so hopefully this provides a lesson to all you idiot savages! Speaking of other people just being straight out hell, in Japan, normal social interactions is ritualized to a point of absurdity. Exchanging business cards in the West is basically as trading some contact info. No big deal. Here's my deets. Call me when you're DTF.
That means down to finance.
In Japan, a business card is almost an extension of your psyche. You have to acknowledge the card, act enthusiastically about the card, similar to how you're supposed to react when you get a birthday card and the only thing you care about is the money inside. Adding on all the other trappings of Japanese social life, things are embedded into their language, like honorifics and tenago. People are expected to be both distant and convivial, friendly and polite, but also reverential and respectful. If you live in a city with 38 million people like Tokyo, then goddamn, sometimes the last thing you want to do is talk to people. Automating payments in Kobini or the complete anonymity of a vending machine do a lot of work in cutting down the smothering sociality of Japanese culture. One final reason is a bit weird to get your head around. Basically, Japan's interest in machines, objects, and robots is directly related to their religion. Even though most Japanese people these days describe themselves as irreligious, there is still an undercurrent of that in the culture that is based around Shinto, which can be best described as the indigenous or folk religion of Japan. Shinto imparts a belief in kami, spirits that are found not only in sacred places such as temples, but also in nature or any sort of inorganic material. I'm keeping this very short and superficial because if truth were to write at length about Japanese religion, this video would last an hour. But the point is that the way the divine is represented in Shinto states that spirits and gods can be found living within all objects. This explains some degree why Japanese love anthropomorphizing objects, adding honorifics to things like tables and desks. It imparts level of respect that can make these objects last longer, but also influences a further amount of intrigue in objects that can move on their own, like robots or automated vending machines. There are some more common and uncommon reasons that people mention when explaining those wacky Japanese have so many vending machines, but this is a series about culture. The vending machines are not culture, they are a byproduct of culture, and one that goes beyond liking things that are convenient. While we talk about how market forces and social expectations make vending machines profitable, the real backbone of a culture of convenience are trends in consumption and production. In other words, capitalism. Capitalism, not the arcana, is the means by which all is revealed because capitalism, like an ideology, is shaped by the culture that it is embedded in. So culture, convenience, and capitalism. Let's talk about those things and how they are different to ours. Capitalism in Japan is actually quite a bit different than here in the United States. Economists have often described Japan's marketplace as collective capitalism, in which the means of production, that means who gets to decide what gets made and who gets to work, are still controlled by corporations. But the goals of these corporations is not that they need to secure continuously growing profits, but they need to establish long-term, friendly, and collaborative relationships with both their employees and their competitors. Combined with a relatively stable welfare state, thanks to not having a military budget due to the whole World War II thing, Japanese industry operates completely differently. For example, there really isn't a billionaire class in Japan. Intergenerational wealth is often frowned upon, and even the wealthiest tycoons have a hard time accumulating so much money that they get to that Bill Gates or Elon Musk status. In terms of actual business, this also means that there is room for the convenience market for both established old money business like Lawson's, Family Mart, and 7-Eleven, as well as locally owned grocery chains. In many American cities, larger retail stores like Walmart are actually banned from operating in city limits because they tend to cannibalize smaller businesses. Overall, the nature of wealth and success in Japan takes on so much more community-centered tenor than the US. But obviously, things are never quite as perfect anywhere, let alone Japan. The Japanese concept of industriousness is probably as well known as their vending machines. Basically, if management is expected to take care of labor, whether through pensions, job security, or paying into welfare, then laborers must do the same for management, sacrificing personal lives, free time, and even their own well-being to support the company they work with. There is a term that has become popular to describe a specifically Japanese penchant for death by overworking: karoshi. Things aren't so hunky-dory for small or new businesses either. Given how long-term the relationships between companies go in Japan, if a newcomer in a market does not play by the rules established by previous generations, it's hard to actually make it into the market. In the US, innovation and breaking with tradition is considered a virtue. In Japan, although it's not outright discouraged, innovation can be a limiting factor for a successful entrepreneur because industriousness is valued over actual productivity. It turns out that per person, Japan is actually less economically productive than its competitors at the macroeconomic level. There are a lot of things to put together here. On one hand, market parity allows for niche products to become successful and available. Even though few people may choose to buy them this way, things like beer and porn are sold enough through vending machines in districts like Akihabara can be devoted to all sorts of narrow interests. Arcades and game rental stores are a dime a dozen in Japan. In the US, all we have are ugly chains like GameStop. Japanese laborers have longer working hours and much more intense expectations, but they also have a higher purchasing power. This means that they can afford to buy slightly more expensive products from kobini or vending machines, and they can choose to buy healthier options, so long as it's fast, easy, and convenient to do so. But then again, the Japanese obsession with convenience should not seem that odd to Americans, because in the United States and much of the developed world is undergoing similar changes when it comes to automation, especially with the automation of labor. Sure, it may seem more visible in Japan with their vending machines and robotic exchange systems, but the same thing is happening here. Since World War II, the United States has expanded on growing service sectors or jobs that provide some service rather than a material product itself. Deliverymen, drivers, sanitation workers, bankers, insurance brokers, salesmen, tech support, and even healthcare to an extent belong to the service sector. And many of these jobs are being automated. Most people can buy groceries online, and Amazon will even send a drone to deliver them. Google is purchasing self-driving cars, and good luck finding a service hotline that isn't mediated by a robot these days. But the point is, the self-driving car is just our stand-in for the vending machine. Now, I want to make it clear that I'm not being a Luddite here. Automation is kind of a cool thing, and automizing labor may be the greatest thing to happen to humans. If you think about it, machines never get tired, they never show up drunk or in a bad mood, they never need a mental health day, get sick, or bring drama to the workplace. And really, machines are better suited to do physical and repetitive work than human beings are. For all you fine young capitalists out there, they also work cheaper. But obviously the downside is that people need to do those jobs to live. You can automate this unskilled labor even through some service jobs to a certain point, but when it comes to those workers, they go through, in the words of a great philosopher, Dusty Rhodes, hard times. It would be one thing for countries to have a robust welfare system, universal basic income, or good unemployment benefits. But if anyone says the United States has a social infrastructure in place to keep people from dying in the streets, I got $600 that says you're wrong. I keep using the words culture of convenience because it's not like America doesn't have a similar culture. It's just that to us, convenience is defined by things like McDonald's or Walmart. Vending machines are, to us, mostly for snacks and drinks, and though all of these things are convenient, they also have a cost. We give up quality and healthiness for a lower price and slightly lower time. In Japan, the culture of convenience is defined by clean, well-maintained kobini and vending machines. Those vending machines with their legendary variety of options are also convenient, but their cost is different. Not better or worse. Not weird or exotic, different. And these differences reflect on us, what we prioritize, and how we move as a culture, whether driven by economics, demographics, or even religion. As is always the case as we journey to Japan. Before I end today's video, I do want to give a few shoutouts and thank yous to everyone that helped contribute this kind of thing. It's one of those projects that just takes a long time, mainly because of all the projects that happen in between. As much as I really love making How to Be an Adventurer, Journey to Japan is a much more complicated beast when it comes to this channel. So I want to give a huge shout out to Poor Man's Poison, who allowed me to use their opening song, which I thought was relatively awesome, and I'm glad I was able to reach out and they were able to respond, and I cannot thank them enough for their time. The intro song was just awesome. The second person, of course, I want to give a huge shout out to is none other than my co-writer who helps me write these massive essay pieces, and it was just an amazing little bit in view into a subject that I really do enjoy when it comes to Japan, and that's vending machines. So I really did get to enjoy just doing this whole project, and Truth or Deal really makes this kind of thing happen. If you're interested in checking out more of Truth or Deal, my buddy Quiz, who helped me edit How to Be an Adventurer, and many others are currently creating a brand new YouTube channel. I can't say the first one, but the foundation that they have created, it's something Foundation. They make mostly gameplay content while also having a lot of the same comedic styles that I personally enjoy. And the last huge shout out I want to give is none other than Belladonna, who had edited just an unbelievable amount of this video and did it in such an amazing time. They are definitely worth hiring, but don't hire them too often. I want to keep them on to do projects like these when they become available financially and also just mentally, because these are just well thought out projects, especially working with Truth and now Belladonna. To be quite honest, I don't have an ending statement for this video. I'm not an economist, and to be quite honest, as much as I really want to give you guys my straight opinion about that, it's just not there. I do understand when it comes to economy, especially when it's here in the United States, that it is a much more complicated and different beast. And it is also just to be well and noted that this is a time where when we look at economies and how well they do or how well they function, and being able to understand the cultures in between is a very interesting thing, at least in my mind, and also something that we have to keep a close eye on because of the realities that persist when it comes to not just only capitalism, but also the nature of the beast that we all consume, and that is the things that these capitalists create in order for us to consume. I guess one of my biggest gripes, especially when I think on culturally, in something that has always bothered me for years, is the nature of death by overworking. And that isn't just in Japan, there is that notion here, especially in America, and that can only be doubled when you think about the video game industry as well. And as much as I would really like to make a video on that, the Japanese and American video game industries are relatively, as I can imagine, the same, if not worse, in Japan because of their culture of work. But once again, just food for thought when it comes to consuming what you consume. And just remember that we are in this together, as much as I want to believe that we are in this together, but we also need to remember the telltale signs of what it is to build these sorts of things and where what we consume comes from. So yeah, that's everything that I've got. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, we hope to see you in the next video. Bye!